Hi, my name is Tatiana, and I'm going to be talking about the shortcomings of the speech-based assessment project. So the main shortcoming of the project is that this was primarily a front-end project. We attempted to set up a back-end, but unfortunately we did not have enough time. So the main things that we want to occur in the back end is we want the user, which in this case we're going to assume to be some sort of medical professional, probably a doctor, a speech language pathologist. We want them to be able to create an account for a patient. And so basically what's going to happen is they create this account so that you can keep track of the patient's data. So what's going to happen is, like we went over in the demo video, a patient is going to conduct a test under the supervision of a doctor, and that speech file is going to be sent to a backend. And in this case, that backend will be a database, and the database is actually going to be MySQL. So that's where the storage for the audio files is going to occur. It's going to occur in a MySQL backend. And we're also going to have a server so that the patient and the medical professional can set up an account to keep track of whose data is who. The other thing that we want to make happen in the next iteration of the project is not only do we want to store the data, but we want to enable these audio files to be analyzed using a speech recognition package called Whisper.Dart. So Whisper.Dart is a artificial intelligence speech recognition package. We were able to get it working in Colab using Python, but we weren't able to fully implement it in the project. So that's something that the next team is going to really have to consider. And then the last thing that we really want to happen is after the speech files are analyzed, we want the results of that speech analysis to be sent back to the smartphone. So I'll go ahead and briefly go over the app again, very briefly, since we already went over it in the demo video, and I can't really get this to fit my screen at the moment, but I already showed it in the demo video, so this is just going to be very brief. But basically the idea is, and how it connects to these shortcomings that I'm talking here, the idea is that medical professional picks a test, the user receives instructions, you begin the test. At this point, as we already went over, you record yourself and what you're recording. So for example, right now, this app is picking up speech from me. This is actually being saved in a speech file, an audio file. So that's why we're able to play it back, right? Because we actually are recording ourselves doing this. And I don't think I enabled the microphone before I started this demo, so it probably didn't pick up anything. That's another thing for the next team that they're going to have to make sure they do, and I'll make sure to put it in the documentation. You actually do have to go here, microphone, and you have to enable so that you can pick up audio on the emulator, but that's not really relevant at the moment. So basically this speech file that has just been collected, the user is going to have an account in MySQL already. And so we're going to send this speech file to the MySQL backend so that we can store the data for that patient. And then at that point, the next team is going to have to figure out how can those speech files then be extracted from the database and then analyzed using this Whisper.Dart. And then after that, after we conduct the analysis with Whisper.Dart, or rather, when the next team conducts the analysis with Whisper.Dart, how can the next team then send that data back so that you get an accuracy right here? And then also, when the medical professional or user presses show results, you get all this data right here. So you get DDK rate, you get some basic recording information, some graphs, and also an explanation of the results. So that's really the main thing that the next team is going to have to figure out. What is the pipeline to make that happen? So we're going to include it in the documentation, but we do have instructions on how to set up a server so that you can create an account. And we do already have a preliminary MySQL database. So those things, the next team will have to set up. What they're really going to have to figure out is, how do you send the audio files to the MySQL database? How do you analyze these audio files using Whisper.Dart? Where do you analyze them? How do you analyze them? How do you optimize the Whisper.Dart package so that you can get the results, or rather the information that you want from the audio files? And then last but not least, they're going to have to figure out how to send the test analysis info back to the smartphone so that it can be analyzed by the medical professional. So that's going to be a really big task for the next team. We did create an entire front end, so I'm assuming that in the next iteration of this project, it is going to be nearly entirely back end with maybe just some UI tweaks. And actually, that's going to be the next part of this shortcomings video, the UI tweaks that the next team will have to make. So the two main ones is this bullet point right here: let the app adapt to different screen sizes. So the issue that we have right now is we are using an Android emulator. I believe that it is Pixel 4 XL or something like that. We'll make sure to have it in the documentation. But basically what we need to happen is we need it so that if you try to open up this app on all sorts of different types of emulators, all sorts of different types of phones, iPhones, Androids, or other devices like iPads, tablets, whatnot, these UI elements, we need them so that they're not going to look super wonky and, go all over the place. Because, even though it looks like right now, the UI looks fine. But if you open this on a tablet, then all of these UI elements are going to go awry, basically. It's not going to look as nice as it looks right now. We're going to have a clock over here, Patika over here. It's just going to be all over the place. You have to account for that by making the app cross-platform using the Flex widget in Flutter. There might be other ways to do it in Flutter, but this is the way that I know of. And basically, you have to implement the Flex widget so that the UI elements on one screen, it'll look like this for any screen that you open up this app on. It doesn't matter what the device is. It doesn't matter if it's an Android. It doesn't matter if it's an iPhone. It doesn't matter what version the phone is. It doesn't matter if it's a tablet. If you implement the Flex widget and you say, hey, I want this icon to always be a certain amount of distance from the margin. I want these icons to always be a certain amount of distance from each other. If you do that using the Flex widget, then you should not have any problems when you're opening up the app on different devices. So the next team will have to take care of that as well. The next thing, and actually this is the last major shortcoming, and this is kind of a small, easy fix. We just need more back buttons. Actually going through this app, I realized that it is a little bit hard to navigate, and I'll just go ahead and demonstrate why. And again, my apologies, I didn't make this recording screen big enough, but you saw the last screen on the demo, or you saw how big the screen was on the demo. So I'll just show you the important parts. So let me just go to homepage real quick. Let me go back. So once again, medical professional opens up this test. They say they want to do the Patika test, or actually I think I opened the P one last time. I'll go back to Patika here as we did in the demo. They click on this, right? Well, what if you've decided that you actually don't want to be here anymore? What if you say, hey, oops, I accidentally clicked the wrong test? Well, you kind of have nowhere to go. We don't have a back button. So we do need to have a back button here. And it's the same, if you go here, if you get to this recording screen, you do have a way to get back to the instructions. But again, there's no way to get back to the main screen if you decided that you picked the wrong test, or if you've changed your mind, or, whatever the case may be. So in order to get back to the screen, you have to do a recording, and you have to get to this point where you can click homepage. And right now, that's the only way to get back to the home screen. So again, this is a pretty simple fix. So that's something that's going to have to be added to the project during the next iteration of this project. Besides that, I think that those are really the major shortcomings. Like I said, I do believe that aside from some of the minor UI changes, such as the back buttons, such as implementing Flex, which might take a little longer, but still should not be a huge deal. The next iteration of this project is going to be largely back-end. So they're going to have to set up a server so that they can create an account. They're going to have to make sure that they have the MySQL database up and running. Again, the server setup and the MySQL setup, we have instructions for that in the documentation because it was provided to us by the PO, so that's no worry. Really, the main challenge is going to be, how do you send the audio files from the app to the backend? How do you store those files in MySQL? How do you extract those files for analysis? How do you analyze them using Whisper.Dart? We were able to do some preliminary tests in Colab using Python, but the team is just going to have to figure out what works best for them, because you have to think about, how would you even get the files from MySQL to Colab? Is that even something that can be done? Is there an alternative that needs to happen? And then last, after you've conducted the tests, you're going to have to send the relevant information back to the app. So accuracy rate, the decay rate, any graphs that you can maybe generate. So this is really going to be the main part of next semester, I anticipate. So these are the shortcomings. And I would also say that not only are these the shortcomings, but these are also the wish list. So these are things that we did not get to this semester because we spent so much time perfecting the front end. And we are very hopeful that the next team will be able to perfect the back end. And that is all for this video.